So, welcome everybody to this latest episode of the Plutopia podcast. And today we have no guest, but Scoop Sweeney and Wendy Grossman, my other co hosts, are here. And we're just going to have a conversation. And we haven't even talked very much about what we're going to discuss, though I did say moments ago to Scoop and Wendy that I might say something about being a dilettante because I realized that I am kind of a dilettante. And I realized that, as a dilettante, I know a lot of things and I know about a lot of things, but I'm spread broadly and thinly across my fields of interest. And I have many fields of interest. And what that means is that sometimes I can have pretty good insights into some of the things that are going on, but sometimes I just miss stuff because I wasn't going deep enough on a particular subject.
Well, I can volunteer as being the anti-dilettante because I'm none of the above. I live out in a forest and I get along well with the animals, but I don't get out in public very much anymore. But I
How
have.
about you, Wendy?
Oh, I'm probably on the dilettante side in that, like a lot of, it's popular these days for journalists to specialize quite tightly, but I never have really done it. And so, if you look at the Net Wars column I write, one week it'll be privacy, and the next it'll be AI, and the week after that it'll be, that I don't know, just rant about some idiot thing.
We often in these conversations find ourselves talking about politics. And sometimes I think that's the wrong path. I think there's maybe too much talk about politics lately, but
Well,
how can
no,
you
I was at
escape
a
it?
I was at an event yesterday run by the Future of Privacy Forum, and there was a guy there who has a Substack called AI Snake Oil, which is a prelude to his book AI Snake Oil, which is coming out soon from Princeton University Press.
Is that
And
Clifford Stoll?
no, his name is
Because
Arvind Narayanan, and
you
Cliff
remember there was a silicon snake oil
I
by
do
Clifford
remember
Stoll.
yes, I remember Cliff Stoll's silicon snake oil. This is AI snake oil, and let me focus on this for a minute. And one of his main points is, I like the line he used: "Broken AI appeals to broken institutions." And so you got to get a lot of places where somebody puts AI in a place where it's supposed to solve something. Only either the problem it solves for is not the problem that an outsider would think was worth solving. For example, an algorithm that uh, eliminates the most costly patients as opposed to the patients who most need help, you know, identifying the patients who most need help. Or anyway, his point was that we have these flawed AI systems, and then we put them in places where actually the problem is a policy problem, and we expect it to fix them. We expect them to fix it, and it's a completely unreasonable expectation.
What are some examples of that?
Well, the hospital thing was one of them. Apparently, the Washington Post in 2019 had a story about an algorithm that some hospitals use to determine which patients need extra medical care. And surprise, surprise, it turns out to be heavily biased towards white patients. And it turns out that actually what the hospital wanted was something that accurately predicted costs. And the algorithm apparently does that perfectly well. But the upshot was to penalize Black patients.
Yeah, medical uh, executives always just love doing those kind of things. They love uh, finding the people that have a lot of money, and they will concentrate on that part of the market. And if you're homeless or poor or just underemployed, you're not part of their algorithm at all.
Well, there's a thing that I've been part of where technology became a significant factor. is the idea of participatory medicine, as we came to call it. It doesn't kind of roll right off the tongue, participatory. But participatory medicine basically is like the idea is that the healthcare team puts the patient in the driver's seat and that the patient knows the patient's condition better than any. I mean, the physicians know the medicine and they understand with some depth um, how particular conditions work and affect the body and so forth. But the patient really knows what's going on with them and with their body. And, people can be relatively intelligent and can really have a pretty good grasp of what's going on with them. And it's a good idea for physicians to not just listen to them, but to try to bring them into the conversation in a big way. And that became much more likely with the advent of the internet. We had a way to distribute information um, about various health issues in such a way that people can become much better informed about whatever thing is going on with them, even if it's relatively obscure. In fact, they could find people that with a similar condition who, they could share stories with and come to have a better and deeper understanding of what was going on with them. And it's been a huge boon. In
It
fact,
doesn't
we
always,
had,
it doesn't always
oh,
work.
go ahead.
I was going to say
Well,
it
I know
doesn't.
it doesn't. I mean, it can't.
Yeah,
It
but I
can't
mean,
because some people just can't grasp,
no, but I
the
also mean
medical.
it's like things, the internet gives a cellist with some very obscure blood disease a way of finding other people with the same blood disease and maybe getting some help. But it also enabled the anti-vax movement to take shape by spreading misinformation. I mean, Jenny McCarthy had plenty to do on television, and I'm sure that was a large part of it too. But even if you stamped, even if you took it, even if you didn't hear anti-vax stuff on television, and even if it didn't come from political candidates, you'd have these pockets of people on the internet, sort of reinfecting the system. And
Yeah,
Yeah, and this is a problem of
do
the
you know that
mainstream, widely distributed internet.
three babies died of whooping cough in Britain this week?
yike.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I had been
Can't
Whooping
reading
imagine
cough.
about there
that.
being a new outbreak in a number of different locations that shouldn't be happening because there have been vaccines for that for a long time.
Did they
Decades.
die or because their parents refused them vaccinated?
I'll look up the
Or
Guardian
do we know?
story. It was a story in the Guardian.
Mhm.
Hang on. Yes. Let's see. Um, yeah. Cases continue to rise across the country. Since January, there have been 4,793 confirmed cases of whooping cough, with 181 babies under 3 months old diagnosed with the illness. Total of 8 babies have now died from whooping cough this year. They're just not
Wow.
getting vaccinated. Some of them are just not getting vaccinated.
Yeah, that borders on the criminal. I mean, criminal negligence there. I mean, it's hard to imagine a person having a child and you don't want them to be well protected. Especially when it's something that's so easily obtained, like a vaccine.
Well, part of the problem is, it's been long enough that people don't remember what these diseases are really like.
Mhm.
They forget the kids died of them. They forget that measles can cause encephalitis. And they think, they believe what they're told. These anti-vax people tell them is, oh, well, this is natural. It strengthens your immune system to get sick. What it doesn't.
Well, we're old enough to remember polio. And I remember getting my first polio vaccine way back when I was probably 5 years old, I guess. And there was no problem with that. All the parents were just actually fighting to get into the place. They had big public gatherings of parents with their children to get the vaccine. And, uh, Salk got the Nobel, I believe, for that. And
Yeah.
now it's looked upon as an evil. It's like they want to take the Nobel back because it's
I
a
don't know that
thing.
I have not heard that they want to take the Nobel back, but I know that at least in a couple of states, they will get rid of all requirements for vaccination in schools, you
Mhm.
just go.
Yeah, poor Queen.
Well, and I'm old enough that I not just remember the vaccine, but I also remember having a cousin who had polio and who was devastated by it. I mean, her health was completely. The only thing that kept her alive as long as she lived, and she lived to be, I think, 12 or 13 years old, and it was because her mom was a nurse and was constantly caring for her.
Hmm.
But I mean, I saw the effects of polio firsthand. And then I got the sugar cube, and I was okay, and I didn't see polio in other people, but um, I I kind of get it, and I think we should think about why people would feel this way. I mean, you're being injected with something that comes into your body, and it's like a foreign substance. And for some people, I mean, I can imagine thinking about it in such a way that that could create a certain level of fear. I'm so used to it. I mean, I've been vaccinated over and over for years and years and years, and I've never had a problem. Some people do have problems with vaccines. Occasionally there's an adverse event, but they're rare. They're extremely rare. There was a question about whether the thimerosal used as a preservative in vaccines at one time caused autism in some children. And that was pretty much debunked, though they no longer use thimerosal as a preservative in vaccines. But that was pretty much debunked, and that I think that's where the whole anti-vax thing started, was people having a concern about that.
No.
The other concern was
it started with Wakefield. It started with Andrew Wakefield.
okay.
He's a now deregistered medical doctor in the UK who wrote a paper claiming that he had found that that the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine was the cause of autism. And his sample was sized was very small, and it turned out that he'd taken money from the wrong people, and the paper was eventually
Yeah, he was a
retracted.
fraud.
Right, but not before it did a huge amount of damage in terms of people picking it up. And it's hard because you're the parent of a kid who develops autism, and you you don't know what the cause was. You're very unsettled. You don't want it to be your fault, quote unquote. And it happens around the time that it's just a coincidence of timing that it makes itself known around the time that your kid gets the vaccine.
Yeah, the whole problem
Well,
with
and then there
people
was
having a problem with vaccines. You said, John, they don't want to put something into their body, but these are people who also put food into their body. They put alcohol into their body with no thought about that. But it's this mystery substance that has been, just
But you could
pointed
look
out
at
as an
it.
evil.
But if you looked at it mathematically, you're not actually putting the food into your body because it passes through, right? So you have a continuous tube through your body. So in a sense, it's inside the Klein bottle, but not actually inside the Klein bottle.
Well, the
well,
nutrients remain with you. Otherwise, you're going to die.
Well, it passes through the
the
donut hole.
the COVID vaccine was a little bit of a different issue in that there were people who were concerned because it was a new form of vaccine and that it was being sort of deployed in a rush because we needed to do something about COVID. And there was a fear. I mean, there were people who were saying that because the vaccine is an mRNA vaccine, that it would affect your DNA.
Yeah, I remember.
There's no evidence that that's at all possible, but those are the kinds of claims that people were making, and And, there was a real fear there, and people felt that there were unreported adverse events, and some people felt that they got sick because of the vaccine, even though it may,
Might have been coincidence.
correlation is not the same as causation, right?
Right. I mean, the mRNA vaccines were not the only kind of vaccines available. And in Britain, the first vaccine that I got was the AstraZeneca thing that was based on, I think, some sort of, uh, it was based on older technology. And it's been being withdrawn now because the mRNA vaccines are more effective. But and there's another vaccine. There's a guy named Peter Hotez at I think it's
Yeah,
Houston.
well, he's in probably Waco. He's
His
Baylor
outfit is
Baylor
developed,
University.
yeah, and they've developed an inexpensive vaccine that they're open sourcing to all sorts of countries.
Yeah.
Which sounds like a really good thing. It seems like he's really doing good work there.
It's great that they have a low-cost vaccine that they can handle that way, because the big problem with all medicine in this country, in the United States, is it's way more expensive than it should be. They sell it for all these different prescription medications for a lot less in the UK and Europe and in Asia. But in this country, they jack up the prices just because they can get away with it. They have control over
Right.
people that should be handling the pricing of medication, but they don't. And my wife takes a lot of medication for, her various conditions. And if we didn't have good prescription coverage, we'd be bankrupt, because those things, the over-the-counter, well, not over-the-counter, but the, uninsured price of those medications are terrible.
Whereas in Britain, if you are over 60, I think, Scotland prescriptions are free. In England, they're free if you're over 60. I think it is. And, that's an extraordinary thing. But, the National Health Service, because it is so large, has really good bargaining ability.
What amazes me on the vaccine front was, in the height of COVID, Fauci was considered, a hero. This is the guy that's trying to get this stuff, into people, and now he's being treated like he's some sort of pariah because,
Marjorie Taylor Greene decided not to call him Dr. Fauci in the hearing.
Mr. Fauci.
Mr. Fauci. I mean, the interesting thing is, I had read several books about the beginnings of the AIDS crisis, and the most notable one being Randy Schultz and the Band Played On, but also Laurie Garrett's book, The Coming Plague. And I knew Fauci's name from those books. And when COVID came along and it started to hit the US, I was scanning all the news stories for his name, thinking he's got to be there somewhere. And then when it popped up, I was sort of very relieved, because I thought it'd be a good thing. And then I thought, good God, how old is he now? We were lucky.
Well, it was politicized, and that's the problem with so many things now. We have culture wars and political wars going on, and people are saying really insane things. I mean, that Marjorie Taylor Greene rant the other day was just insane. I've never seen anything quite like. Well, I have, actually.
Well, what did she say?
Yeah, it's findable on YouTube. Oh, she and maybe another one or two of the legislators were going off on him for tests that involved animals, specifically dogs. And she was showing pictures of a couple of beagles who were apparently unconscious. And it looked to me like their heads were inserted in some kinds of boxes or whatever. And she said that you approved this. You were torturing dogs. And And somebody said, I guess Fauci said, he said, "Well, I didn't know we were here to talk about dogs. You know, that doesn't really have anything to do with what we're here to talk about." But, you know, I mean, he also responded, he said that all animal testing that his organization does is according to guidelines set up to ensure the humane treatment of animals in testing. And what more could he say than that? What better could he say than that? And, you know, the downside of that is, yeah, in animal tests, sometimes animals die, or there's, you know,
The thing I
the
can't
testing can be difficult for some people.
the thing I
Oh, go
can't
ahead.
figure out is what do they get out of attacking him? He's retired now. He's, you know, what is the win
He's an easy
in
target.
attacking him? Yeah, but
Well, he's connected. He's been connected to a particular. I mean, they connect him with their enemies, the Democrats. You know, the
yeah,
experts, the
but
liberals,
it's
the
like Trump's,
elites.
but it's like Trump's obsession with the Clintons. Bill Clinton is never going to be president again. Hillary Clinton is never going to be president. They're you know they're basically, other than I guess fundraising, they're retired. And I don't understand this obsession with looking backwards at them and continuing to complain about them when they're,
Well, I
you
get
know,
it though. I mean,
they're doomed to fade into irrelevance.
it's
Why
the
not?
power of othering.
Yeah,
It's just that. It's the power of othering.
the fact checkers outed Trump for him going on Fox this week and saying he never said lock her up.
I know, I saw
And,
that.
and it's like,
I mean,
there are so many examples of that. Yeah, maybe he said it, those exact words a few times, but he got the message across, about she needs to go to jail. They need to put her away in prison. It's like that means you lock her up. But to have him just come out and say, I never said that, that's, his typical way of dealing with an uncomfortable truth.
well,
Well, he's actually saying, I never said that, but maybe it would be a good idea.
the UK has an election coming up on July 4th. And Rishi Sunak the current prime minister, has already been caught telling all sorts of lies about the labor policies. And, it's the same thing, except that he's wearing a nicer suit.
Yeah, he just took a page out of the Trump playbook. That's the standard Trump approach to anything.
I know, but it's weird because I mean, well, there's a lot of Tories, they know they're doomed, so they're just grasping at any straw they can. But Sunak was billed himself as bringing some sort of sanity back to British government after the Liz Truss 49 days and the Boris Johnson chaos.
Boris Johnson.
And
Jeez.
well, Johnson is irrelevant. Johnson's time has passed. He's not even an MP anymore.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, he's off making dinner speeches, and nobody, there's a few elements in the Tory party that would like to bring him back, but it's not going to happen. I mean, he's just not. I really think things have their time, and I really have the sense that Boris Johnson's time is over.
He had his 15 minutes of fame. It's done.
Well, he had his numerous years of fame. I mean, remember, he was mayor of London before he was an MP, and then he was prime minister for 2 or 3 years.
I don't really understand the why authoritarian regimes are so prominent and I guess attractive to people right now.
I think people who feel really insecure maybe find it comforting to have somebody who sets down rules. If they've been let down by the previous situation, and somebody tells them what to do, sometimes it's comforting.
Yeah, one thing that
Well, go ahead.
One thing that people are saying these days, that perhaps there is too much news coverage going on that helps anybody that shouldn't really be ignored to get a voice in and to get a lot of into a lot of people's faces and on the various news and the internet stuff. People like us didn't exist back in the pre-internet age, and now anyone can be an influencer, and they can influence you for good or for bad.
Well, and they warp news story. People warp news stories. Even the larger news organizations that are supposed to be, professional journalists, they warp the news in order to make it more engaging. They're not reporting the news exactly as it is, but they're spinning it one way or another, and that's a problem. But we've been told for all the years that we've been citizens of the United States that we live in a democracy and that it's a free country, and that we should have a commitment to democracy. Democracy actually doesn't work all that well, but like Winston Churchill said, it's better than pretty much anything else. It's the worst form of government except for all the others.
The least worst.
I think, yeah, and we have people now who are emerging that really don't like the idea of democracy at all, and they don't even want to honor an intention to be democratic, and they have a following. I mean, this is Trump, this is like Peter Thiel, this is like, there's Elon Musk, there's quite a few of those people there, and the problem for me is that I can't really argue that democracy in any kind of pure form is actually a great way to govern. It can be terribly inefficient. You can have mobs, form. If we didn't have some degree of democracy, Trump never would have been elected in the first place. He was able to build a following and win an election. He didn't win the vote, but he was able to win the election because of our peculiar form of, a democratic republic. And I think that the conversation where some people keep saying, well, we have to save our democracy, and other people are hinting, though not coming right out and saying that, no, we need to trash the democracy. We're not really having a conversation. We just have people throwing half-baked ideas around about how governance should work. And, one thing that you require in order for governance to work is a set of people who are willing to govern, which, we have fewer of those now than we have in my lifetime.
Well, we keep treating them so badly.
Yeah, well, the Trumpers, a new push to defund. They criticize all the people who are trying to defund police departments. They want to gut the Justice Department, the Department of Justice. They want to have a big purge, and if Trump gets elected, the first order of business would be for them to come in and clean house in the Department of Justice and all the other judicial areas and fill it with Trumpers. And they're serious about that. And Steve Bannon was, as he was being told he had to go to prison on July 1st, was going on about they need to clean house because they're just out to get him.
Well, you hear what they're saying. They're saying, if this can happen, if you can do this to Donald Trump, you can do this to anybody. And they're right. Anybody who commits a crime can be prosecuted. It's true.
That's sort of the whole idea.
But the question is, do you want to prosecute criminals?
Yeah.
I think it's a good idea.
And they don't mind prosecuting libs.
So kind of to pull this back towards and closer to the sorts of topics we usually talk about, how do we keep...
If there is such a thing.
How do we use the internet to protect democracy?
Yeah, it used to be, I remember I was at a science fiction convention like Bruce Sterling and I were giving a talk, and we were giving a talk about the internet specifically. And I think it was just the two of us. I don't think there was anybody else on the panel with us. And some people in the audience started off about how the internet was going to be great for the democratization of this country and the world and so forth. And he very quickly wanted to shut them down because he didn't buy it for a minute. And I was on the fence. I said, well, it's kind of nice to hear that kind of idealism, but really, we see now that it hasn't really created a more democratic world. It's created a more chaotic world, if anything else.
Well, remember John
And
Perry Barlow?
it is a good question.
John Perry Barlow thought the internet was going to create millions of new libertarians.
Indeed. I
And
mean,
it
if you
may
got a
have.
hammer, everything's a nail,
But, everybody talks about, they're afraid of AI in this election, they're afraid of social media in this election, they're afraid of disinformation in this election. But there must be ways that the internet is actually going to help, right? Everybody talks about
Well,
how it's
part of the
bad.
problem is in what you said. The people are afraid of this. I mean, the fear itself is a problem. That people are so fearful and they understand so little. I mean, really, it's hard to understand what all's going on. It's very weird and complex. And most people don't understand AI. Most people have ideas about AI that are pretty fanciful. And AI is, sort of like the buzzword of the moment, and things that were always there that were never called AI before are being called AI. So it's not. So what are you talking about when you talk about AI? What are you talking about when you talk about freedom? Freedom for whom? Freedom from what? Obviously, the Republicans, the GOP that we have, the MAGA people, don't want freedom for women. They want women to be very controlled. They don't want sexual freedom. They don't want reproductive freedom. They don't want freedom of thought. They don't want people to be free to read whatever books they want to read, or at least they don't want them to have free access to those books. There's a lot of freedoms that they don't want, yet they say that they're about freedom. They say, well, if the Democrats are elected, our freedoms are gone. What freedoms?
You have just summed up why I celebrate July 4th every year by making a donation to Planned Parenthood.
That's a great idea.
That sounds good.
I think Planned Parenthood, I honestly think Planned Parenthood and the National Network of Abortion Funds and some of these others really should do July 4th fundraising on the grounds that independence for women doesn't exist without reproductive rights. But they don't.
Yeah. I mean, this idea of abortion is killing a baby. I mean, terminating a fetus is not the same as killing a baby. I know that's debatable. Some people could argue that till they completely run out of breath.
That's why there's usually some limit. People get uncomfortable the closer the fetus comes to looking like an actual baby.
But the Republicans like to say that the Democrats are in favor of abortion up to the time of birth. And I've never heard of that. I don't know. Nobody has ever done that.
No, they openly say that they think
babies, yeah, after they're born.
Democrats want to kill actual babies, which is just like,
Whereas the Republicans wait until they grow up.
Yeah, they're in favor of abortion after the age of 21, I think.
Yeah.
Well, but they kill.
That's very late term.
The states where
Yes.
abortion is most banned are the states where it's hardest to get prenatal health care. It's hardest to get assistance for children. The schools tend to be the weakest. There's a whole lot of things that go together that are anti-family policies, and those are the states that also want to restrict abortion and even contraception. And so they say that they're turning towards that.
Yeah, I find it interesting
And,
that the
it
Democrats.
never made any sense to me. In the 70s, it used to be that the people who were in favor of abortion were also in favor of sending kids off to Vietnam to be killed.
Mm, yeah, I find it interesting that the Democrats are doing an interesting method of outing the Republicans on abortion rights and contraception. Their whole deal with the protecting contraception bill that, of course, is going to fail because the Republicans will kill it. But it's interesting. They're doing a lot of things along that line of they know the bills won't pass, but they want to be able to point to the people that stopped it from passing. And I think that's actually
Well, it's more
a
than that.
useful tactic.
They want to expand the over. They also want to expand the Overton window of what is thinkable, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. That window, that Overton window
Yeah, I
has been
mean,
sliding over to the right for a while now.
because realistically, if you want to get rid of abortion, the best way to do it is to make contraception really easily accessible.
Yeah, and then you have Republicans who want to get rid of I'm trying to remember the name of the drug, the abortion pill that you could get mailed to.
Mifepristone.
Yeah,
Mifepristone.
yeah, and that is just typical because it's something that people have been able to do, but now that it's become a big political football, then they want to legislate against it.
It's very weird to me because when I lived in Ireland in the 1980s, abortion was banned in the Constitution and divorce was banned and it was such a medieval country in that way. And I'd come from New York State, and now the countries have swapped positions. Abortion has become legalized in Ireland, and it's being chopped away here. It's very strange to me. But
Well, I mean,
uh, I had lunch yesterday with Jay Stanley, that we interviewed a few
oh,
weeks
cool.
back
Yeah.
from ACLU, and he quoted something that Barry Steinhardt, who is a former ACLU guy, used to say, which is no civil right ever stays won.
Yeah. I remember Barry Steinhardt. Is he still around?
Yeah, I think so. I think the last I heard he was retired in Florida.
Yes, we all should be retired, not necessarily in Florida.
Not Florida, please.
I've never understood what's so great. I mean, I think retirement is great if you have a job you hate, but otherwise, why do it?
Yeah.
Well, what retirement really means, as from my perspective, is that you can do what you want to do versus having something that you have to do every day that you don't necessarily want to do but have to do. And that's kind of nice, after years and years of getting up every morning and dragging your ass to work. I mean, I had years of I went through a period of time where I did things that I thought were really cool and important, but I wasn't really working. I wasn't really getting paid much. I wasn't making much money doing that. And retirement is kind of like that. You can do things that you think are cool, that you think are important. You don't have to do anything though you're not hustling to make a buck. You don't have anything to prove anymore.
It's great if you can afford it.
Well, that's the thing. You've got to figure out how to afford it. You're usually going to live a lot more modestly than you were living before. Social Security doesn't really cover everything, so you need some form of income, maybe some passive income or something to supplement that.
Nomad Land?
Which?
Nomad Land.
Oh, Nomad Land. Yeah, I did, in fact.
I tell everybody they should see that movie. I think it's the movie that Woody Guthrie might have made if he were a filmmaker living now. You know,
Yeah.
all the people in that movie, except for Frances McDormand and David Strathairn, are the real people that were originally profiled in the article that set the whole thing off in Harper's Magazine. And it's these people who can't afford to retire, who are hosed by the financial crisis, and who have sort of they live in vans and they have carved out this circuit of seasonal jobs that keep them alive. And then they winter on federal lands in Arizona and places like that. And
Yeah, they work
they
at Amazon.
yeah, well, that's one of the seasonal places. And
Yeah.
they have this very much harder life than they thought they would have in their 60s and 70s, but at the same time, they get to go all these special places that most of us never see. So there's a kind of, you know, when I wrote about it, I sort of said that that there are two American dreams. One is the nice house with the chicken in the pot and the car outside and the picket fence. And the other is this dream of independence and freedom and being on the road and not being tied to anything. And they sort of collide at these land dwellers, who, as I said in the review, believed in the American dream and then it broke up with them.
Yeah. Well, my
But it's
sense
such
of
a
that movie was
gorgeous
that those people they felt a kind of freedom that they would not otherwise have felt. They liked the way they were living, as
They
apparently.
did, but at the same time,
And
I
I've
mean, Linda
seen,
May tells the story of working from the time she's 15 or 16, and then waking up in her 50s and realizing that her Social Security was going to be like $500 a month. You know,
yeah,
Yeah, that's the trade-off, and there are no longer old-style pension plans that used to keep people, well cared for in their retirement. But they did away with most big corporations did away with those kind of plans because it was too beneficial for the employee and not for the employer, and
yeah.
they pushed for 401ks and little you know things that pretend to be a pension plan but aren't really. Yeah, I was lucky to
yeah.
be.
You don't get much from those.
Yeah, well, I was lucky to work at Kaiser Permanente when they had that. We were, it was a union shop and they had good pensions, and that has kept me alive. And fortunately, my wife, she worked for the medical group, and they also had the pension plan. But very few people that we know had retirement benefits like that, and it's basically an endangered species now. I mean, the idea of giving someone a good retirement plan is against everything that modern business believes.
Well, and
It's true.
especially lower paid employees whose jobs don't include health benefits anyway,
Mhm.
and don't include pension plans. I mean, I'm sure if you're a cashier at 7-Eleven or a greeter at Walmart or whatever, I don't know what kind of pension you would expect from a company.
If Social Security was to go away, and it very well could go away, think how many people would be just totally screwed, unable to support
I think
themselves.
old age poverty is about to blow up in Britain, I think, because there's a whole generation of people who can't afford to buy houses, so they're renting. Rents don't go down because you've retired.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what's been happening in California. California has just a constant stream of people moving away. It used to be people wanted to move to California. And now Austin's seeing a little of that too. People are moving out of Austin because they can't afford the rents. The rents have gone sky high. So they're moving to the outer areas like, my little uh, town near me in Bastrop County is growing like crazy because they have affordable housing and Austin doesn't.
Well, it's scary when you have the feeling that your government doesn't really care whether you're okay or not. And that's
Yeah.
kind of like the GOP thing. GOP doesn't care what happens to people.
Yeah, that's not in their job
The
description.
Democrats appear to. All the stuff that Biden has been doing through his presidency seems to suggest that he cares and that that part of government cares. but Biden may very well, he may very well go away. He may very well not be reelected. And we will have a government that is, if anything, punitive and certainly not supportive of people's welfare.
Yeah,
And what then?
What you're seeing now also is the impact that's been going on for quite a while of venture capital. So, really, doing away with people's job security, because so many companies have been put out of business because they were overcapitalized. They couldn't make their payments. They go bankrupt, and all their employees are left out in the cold. And you're seeing that more and more.
Yeah.
The whole influence of venture capital has been bad for a lot of businesses. I mean, it's easy money, or it seems to be, until the bill comes due and you have to pay it back.
Well, going back to the use of the internet for malfeasance, I see that while we've been talking, a federal judge has ordered Steve Bannon to report to prison by the 1st of July.
Right. Yeah,
It's true.
He was outraged by that.
Oh, yeah?
But I'm sure he's expecting future President Trump to give him a pardon.
Is his case a federal case?
Yeah.
Well, I think so. I mean, it's a violation of a subpoena.
Yeah,
he didn't respond to the subpoena from Congress.
Because Trump could not pardon himself for his New York case because it's a state case, not a federal case.
Yeah, well, we've got our own partner here, partner in chief, Governor Abbott in Texas, just pardoned a guy who shot and killed a protester at a Black Lives Matter protest, and just promised as soon as the guy was convicted at his trial, the governor said he would pardon him immediately because it's one of their folks, I guess. And he did as soon as he got.
He didn't just pardon him, though. He did more than that. He restored his right to own a weapon.
Oh, of course. Yeah, you don't want to take those guns away from those fine murderers.
But we should mention that the AG here in Austin is contesting that. Mm-hmm. And I didn't really realize that you could contest a pardon, but there's various I's that have to be dotted and T's that have to be crossed, and apparently Abbott didn't do that.
Yeah, that's not his.
So it may be that this pardon may be washed out. I don't know.
We have a lot of governors, our governor in Texas and many others in the red states that have decided they're going to be their own independent arbiter of justice. A lot of people just feel like what Trump has gotten away with is something they can get away with. And it's just it's frightening to see these people saying, well, we're just going to round everybody up and deport them on our own. That's what Abbott wants to do.
Well, there are undocumented aliens who come into this country that are entering the country legally, but they have no documentation yet, so they're still considered undocumented. And the federal government, in Texas, the federal government has worked with places like Annunciation House in El Paso to provide food and shelter for people like that as they come in. They may be refugees or whatever. And the Attorney General of Texas is trying to get Annunciation House in El Paso shut down and to force the guy who runs it, Ruben Garcia, to turn over all the organization's records, including the names of people he's housing. Now, he's refused to do that, and there's going to be a big legal battle over that. But this is basically a religious leader who is operating an organization, a compassionate organization to help people in need. And the Attorney General wants to shut that down. And if he had his way, he'd probably toss the guy in jail. It's kind of a terrible thing, and it's an example of the kind of thing that's happening in Texas. And it's a very sad thing. It's very sad that Texas has to endure the indignity of having a government that just doesn't care.
Yeah, it's interesting that it's a religious organization, and the Republicans have been really big on touting religious freedom. You can't oppress us because of our beliefs, no matter how wacko they are. And suddenly, this religious organization is evil. Yeah, I'm just like, well, who's drawing the line here? Which
Well, I don't
religion's
think they
evil?
consider it a religious organization because it's Catholic.
Well, yeah, well, yeah, it's helping people that aren't blonde and white.
Well, Biden is a Catholic, and 6 of the Supreme Court judges are Catholic.
Interesting. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't seem particularly religious.
No, they don't.
Some of them don't. What is Amy Comey Barrett? She's part of some odd religious organization, isn't she?
Nominally, she's at least nominally Catholic, and then she belongs to some sort of sect or something. I don't know much about. Yeah, but I looked it up once, and that seems to be the situation. It's a lot of Catholics. When you consider that it was considered scandalous in the 60s, or it was considered surprising that JFK was able to get elected as a Catholic.
Well, that was a big
Big
deal.
fuss about
Yeah, it was a big deal.
And
I
now
remember.
they're everywhere.
Yeah, when I was in high school and that election was happening, my parents were Baptists, and they were being told that the Catholics were stocking up weapons in the basement at the Catholic Church and in the cathedrals. So when Kennedy is elected, they'll be taking over and they'll be out shooting Baptists, I guess. But these were adults, supposedly sane adults who were saying this garbage.
No, but that tells you that misinformation has not changed very much.
Yeah, that even,
Yeah. It's just better distributed than it used to be.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
And actually, that gets back to what you were talking about whether the internet could be helpful in support of democracy, and our discussion about how it seems to be going the other way, and AI too. There's a warning. I think something just came out where the EU elections are coming up, and there's some experts that are saying that AI will probably be used to like supercharge the spread of fake news. And I believe it. I do wonder though whether people are more resistant now to fake news than they used to be, and to disinformation than they used to be, because we're so aware of it. Do you think
They might be, but then what the disinformation people say is that the real goal is to make you distrust everything you see, both good and bad. And so it makes it harder for good information too.
yeah, if the big lie agrees with what you believe, then it's not misinformation, it's good information. That's the way people look at it. But if it's not in agreement with your beliefs, then it's misinformation.
Actually, I think the bigger thing for the states to worry about is the Republicans' attempts to suppress the vote. I think that's a much bigger deal than disinformation online.
Well, the whole
Yeah. And
thing of deep fake, video and audio has become really hard to detect without some serious technology behind it, because it's gotten really good. It used to be you'd see these deep fakes where someone had just scotch taped Biden's head onto Adolf Hitler's body or something ridiculous like that. But now it's gotten very high tech and very hard to spot the fakes from the real audio and video that's out there.
Well, I've decided to be optimistic about this because historically we do develop. There've always been fakes, and we have historically always developed ways of spotting them. And I mean, when you think about thinking of the knock apparitions in Ireland, where the Virgin Mary and these people at dusk in Knock in Ireland. And it's been persuasively shown that it was probably a magic lantern reflected on the side of the church. And no one today would be fooled by a magic lantern. But at that time, sort of illuminated images were rare and they were new, and people weren't used to them and didn't expect to see them. And I think context will teach us a lot. And I just sort of decided to be hopeful that we will actually develop ways of detecting the faked audio and video, even though they're getting better.
It's kind of interesting to watch this like Trump phenomenon, and their polling, which I think is kind of unreliable at this point, shows that Trump still has a lot of support. But when he holds a rally, there don't seem to be that many people showing up. It used to be that those rallies were pretty full, but they seem to be drawing fewer and fewer people. And
Yeah,
it almost,
also there weren't a lot of protesters outside the courtroom.
that's true. That's true. I mean, I don't think they actually support Trump. I think it's more like they oppose the idea of Joe Biden or of the Democrats being elected. And they
Well,
have these strange ideas about, huh?
they're not all the same. Some oppose Biden, some do support Trump, some support Trump, that they associate different. You have a lot of people, they all have different motives.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah. But to me, it seems almost impossible. Like this upcoming election has a real fog around it, as far as I'm concerned. I hear people saying that they think this or that is going to happen, and I really don't have a clue. I don't know what to expect. Like voter suppression, I don't know how widespread it'll be. I don't know how the voter turnout is going to work. I don't know who's going to show up. I don't know whether people are going to have to fight in order to make their vote. I don't know whether people are going to show up at polling places with guns. I mean, I've heard all of these things, but I don't know. I really can't tell.
Well, the whole
Well,
movement to change the way the elections are administered has been, a lot of changes in the red states, particularly, where they've replaced anybody that looks like they really want to have a free and fair election. If it's not for Trump, then they don't want the election to happen, I guess.
the Daily
Are
Docket,
you sure, though? I mean,
Mark Elias's outfit, reported today that the Trump campaign is suing Nevada to block undated postal ballots or something like this.
Mm.
And so I think that's the current phase of it, is legal cases aimed at removing methods of voting that they think are used by Democrats.
Yeah.
But I do think we'll learn a lot from the British election in July, because they're always, when the results of the EU referendum were known, my first thought was sort of, I hope Americans see this and realize this means Trump can win. And I think that Britain and the US don't always go hand in hand, but they're often the trend, whatever the trend is in one of them tends to be reflected in the other. So I'm kind of hoping, we're all hoping for a sort of, I mean, nobody, it's not necessarily that labor is going to be wonderful, because we all know that the country has a lot of financial problems and labor can't fix them just by getting elected. But nonetheless, if we can get rid of these conservatives who are just not interested in governing, and 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 have some fresh ideas, or at least some serious thought to what needs to happen, then that might suggest that maybe the Democrats will do all right. But who knows? I mean,
yeah.
I find it hard to believe that Trump is going to be even there. He's going to be he's losing sentience by the day. I mean, somebody described it as Joe Biden's brain is aging, Trump's brain is dementing. And it's happening in
Yeah.
front of us. And,
Yeah.
it's sort of hard for me to believe that in debates, for example, Trump is even going to be able to stay coherent.
Well, I haven't been seeing much coherent anything coming out of the Trump camp lately. I mean, since the guilty verdict, he came unhinged and then got worse after that. I don't know where it's going to end up next, but he's definitely headed over the hill, I think.
Yeah, he just recorded a campaign video, where you could see he was visibly foaming at the mouth. Some people felt he might have rabies.
It's the Adderall again.
Yeah, no doubt.
We'll see. I mean, the election is still some months away, so there's kind of time still.
Yeah. Well, we're running out of time, so I'm gonna have to get out and get back to work on my bunker. I'm building me a bunker there just in case he gets elected. I have a place to hide out for 4 years. I'll stock it with a lot of Twinkies and good wine.
Twinkies and wine together?
Yeah, it's all American, boy.
Yeah, you just put some Twinkies in a bowl, pour the wine over them, and
Gross.
grab your spoon.
Twinkies. Yeah, it's not a great food source, but Twinkies will stay fresh on a rock in the desert for months.
Believe it or not, I happen to know that that's a myth, because there was a shop in London called Cyber Candy, which launched first as a mail order, as an internet business, and they used to have a Twinkie counter in the window, because the Twinkies had to be. What the proprietor told me is the Twinkies are actually very fragile. They have a short shelf life. They had to be flown in, and people were always coming in and asking for them because they'd seen them on Friends or one of the other American shows. But they have a very short shelf life, surprisingly. So she told me.
I don't think I've ever eaten a Twinkie. Does that seem weird?
No.
Maybe so.
It seems a sign of sanity.
Yes, that is definitely not a plain food choice.
Whatever my other sins may have been, I've been eating well.
There you go. The fewer the ingredients, the better, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We are out of time.
Well, let's all go have some Twinkies and wine, and we'll regroup again.
Okay.
Right on.
See you guys soon.
Okay, off we go.
Right.
Bye-bye.
You can stay in touch with Plutopia at plutopia.io. On Facebook, look for @Plutopia News. On Twitter, it's @Plutopia. This is the Plutopia News Network, 20 minutes into the future.